Good morning, how are you? I'm still up here in Maine, and we've kind of thinned the herd a little bit because there's like a mist, and my Irish dry skin is very comfortable up here. That's something to keep in mind. The weather is going to be foggy and rainy a little bit, and I suppose that has to do with the approaching hurricane as well. So what's going on? The good thing about a break like this, when I don't so intensely review what's going on, is that the distance, I think, gives you some perspective. And the perspective that I have is that we have a fairly corrupt system. And trying to analyze Trump is one of the necessary exercises that has to be done carefully and accurately, because the consequences are substantial. There's a book about Trump and how he was involved in 3,500 lawsuits. And he started a fair number of them, and apparently he amuses himself with it. He avoids responsibility with it. He wins some, but it doesn't seem to be the object. He has nurtured this kind of aggression as a way of bullying people who maybe can't afford the lawsuit, who don't want to have the stigma against their reputation based on an allegation by Trump, no matter how discredited he became in the years he was in New York, and certainly since. You know, we've seen him fold at the courthouse door. That's one of the things he does. Paying, a penny on a dollar, or even more than that. And he does that because, well, I guess he thinks he can afford to do it, and it's become a mechanism for it. And there's another thing he does which tells us something about his character. While many of us are concerned if we incur debt for a mortgage, a business, whatever, car, we think we're obligated to pay it back, not him. And he has leveraged some of his schemes based on the bank, ultimately lending him so much that he kind of owns the bank. They have to work it out with him, because if they don't work it out with him, then they fail as well. And so that's been a leverage. Another piece of who Trump is general bullying, historic bullying, such as intimidating people. They'll lose jobs, things will be said about them and so forth if they come forward and they testify about what they did or didn't do, or bad information they have that could hurt him. And we know that because we've seen enough instances of it. The last thing that is a thread through all of the above is that he lies. He says whatever is suitable to the moment to his advantage. I mean, the biggest lie, of course, is to say he won an election he lost, and to keep repeating it, invoking, at least in the early days, that this is what Hitler did. The big lie. You tell it, enough people believe it, and it gives you credibility. Also, his angle, by extension, when he came into politics, was to basically believe that he gained the system. The popular vote is interesting, but he wanted to use the core vote in such a way that in states where the numbers would be close and he could win by the Electoral College, he sought to do that, and all of his techniques were applied there. And that's the subject of electors and things like that. So now we have him full-blown in a situation in which he's finally called out the dogs of war. And they're chasing him in 4 criminal actions, 2 state, 2 federal. The state ones if convicted, he can't get a pardon for those. The federal ones are pretty powerful, and they're all on track. And the resources to fight them for private citizen Trump, who must rely on the kindness of strangers, invoking an old marvelous play, is a trying event, such that to keep Rudy quiet, if you will, about what he knows about Trump, has Trump holding fundraisers for him, because he can't outright dedicate the funds to him for all the actions that he has. So this is a very difficult process for Trump, and that's great for us. So what does he do in this circumstance? He had hoped in Georgia, for example, the state case, to ride the shoulders of Meadows, and as a, quote, public official, to be transferred to a state case, and perhaps there, as Meadows hoped, to get immunity for his public position. But we already have seen what the judges are saying, which makes sense, which is that, sorry, campaigning is not part of your official function. In fact, there are statutes against it. So that avenue seems to be cut off. But his more general one, which is the subject of apparently some sealed filings, involve Trump's extrajudicial statements, which are an extension of the individual coercion that he exercises on people for his statements attacking the process, the system, the judge, the prosecutors, the witnesses, the public. And so that's become his theory. And in the most recent filing that is public, he accuses Judge Chutkan in the federal case in D.C. of being biased against him. Now, what she said in capsule was, we're prosecuting you, who were the grunts on the ground fighting for the overthrow of the government without fact of fraud or legal theory of substance. And that is the basis of his challenge. And for the longest time, as you know from my writhing around about this subject, the Justice Department couldn't get off its hindquarters and do anything for 2 years. The judge expressed an opinion akin to mine and others in and out of government, perhaps in the Justice Department, who were suppressed, to get off the dime and start investigating and prosecuting Trump. And finally, I think, the pressure became too great. And I had to believe that Biden was allowing the inert Attorney General, the saddest Attorney General perhaps in history, short of those who were indicted, like Mitchell. And I think Biden encouraged him to do nothing on the theory that we'll win this politically. And I have to question Biden's silence after he won the election that allowed this monster to grow. That is, this steal the vote false theory about why Trump and not Biden should be the president-elect and then the president. So what is he doing now? Presently, he is seeking the recusal, that is, for Judge Chutkan to withdraw, for saying the obvious, which is, why is it nobody is asking about what Trump did? I don't think that's a prejudice. I think that's a fair question. I think a lot of people were asking it. And I guess some would say implicit in that is a belief that he has responsibility. But you have to say, I'm not going to believe my eyes, my ears, my senses about his involvement and treat him as innocent given that we're prosecuting so many people who are on the ground for his behalf and no one else's, and finally that's happened. Now, judges all the time tell jurors that they have to put aside their personal beliefs and resolve questions of fact based on instructions they get and not on any preconceived notions they have. And as a former prosecutor and as a lawyer of many years, we can do that, and we do it every day. And so I believe that this motion, desperate as it is, will be denied. The next question is, will there be a clashing of prosecutions against Trump? And I think the answer is, you bet. The 4 cases of a criminal nature could bump into each other, could change places in the lineup. This is not like a bakery in which you take a number and you're next up after a tiresome wait some busy Sunday at Zabar's on the west side of Manhattan. So this is a case in which will Georgia go first? And I frankly would like to go down to that trial, and I'm serious. I couldn't spend 4 months, but I'd like to go down for a week of pivotal testimony, and depending on how they start the case, the jury selection will stall the meat of the case, but even that will be interesting. So if October 23rd becomes the date, that could be enough time before the DC trial, which is March. And the New York case is floating a little bit, and the Florida case, I assume Judge Loose Cannon will delay that as much as she can. So the cases that seem to me to matter in terms of effect, going to have the most difference in terms of the lay of the land, in terms of the system of government working, and in terms of outcome, will be Georgia and DC. And that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's an outline of where we are and what's likely to happen. Now, there will be an appeal, it's already mentioned, of the judge's ruling against Meadows having the case removed and seeking a stay. There's already been law mentioned that says any removal proceeding may not interfere with the pending case. The pending case goes forward, and there's been legal paper pleadings that say just that. So Trump should fail that argument, but Trump is going to try that argument. They're going to try everything they can. And if you're the trial court judge, you say, well, until somebody stops me, I just keep going. And October 23 is, 40 days away, something like that. So that's where the case will go. I think if I were the judge in court, I'd decide the simplest thing is we deal with the logistical challenges of having 19 or whatever number make it to the trial, all tried together, and deal with the spread of motions that these people try to put together in the last minute, frivolous or not. And the judge becomes a verb, not a noun. The judge decides, doesn't just observe. The judge acts, and acts with finality and clarity. And that's how the case proceeds. And one thing's damn sure, the Georgia case ain't being tried in that little tiny courtroom. So that's my observations from a distance, off in Maine, enjoying the soggy weather. And with any luck, I'll be out again tomorrow and talk to you about what I see. So I say goodbye to you amidst my bushes and trees near the waters of the Atlantic. Bye-bye.